Hello guys, Tim here from Audio Tutor. Today I want to talk about piano, mixing piano. We don't talk about piano enough on the internet anywhere. It's really hard to find some good tutorials out there regarding mixing and recording piano. I've done a few videos in the past. You can definitely find them on my channel. Today I just want to talk about the mixing process. I've got a couple of projects, pretty simple projects, kind of instrumental. They're going on a new album, and they both include a lot of piano. They both include a piano as kind of the main focus of the song. So I just want to go through the two different mixes here and how I've mixed the piano. They are different in many ways, so hopefully this video can be really helpful for you if you are looking at mixing that piano. So the first project here that we have up on the screen, we have a piano that was actually, this was a Yamaha Clavinova that was recorded. So not a real piano, a Clavinova, as in one of those very expensive keyboard versions that have the weighted keys and all of that and a really nice sound to them. And this was recorded by jacking out of the piano, with a 1/4-inch jack, and recording a performance straight out from there. So let's play a bit of it, and then we'll go through what we did, what kind of processing we did with the piano itself. All right, so the first thing I will say is that, of course, the Clavinova that was used was a roughly $1,000, £1,000 piece of equipment, all right? So essentially, I suppose the price doesn't really matter, but the sound coming from the Clavinova piano is a really good sound, all right? They are built to sound just like a real piano, and it is a gorgeous sound that you get even if you're just jacking straight out of the machine itself. That piano is a great sound to start off with. So that's kind of the first thing I'll say is if you have, a $40 toy keyboard and you're trying to make it sound like a grand piano, you're going to have a hard time. You've got to start with a good sound in the first place. I never like to fix things later on kind of thing. I always want to grab a good sound to start off with and then improve on that good sound rather than trying to fix something while you're mixing, right? It's the mixing phase, not the fixing phase. So let's look at the processing on this. Maybe we should just let's try and find a little bit to listen to. Maybe this bit here, and I'll take all the processing off and we can listen to the original sound. All right, so the first thing I kind of noticed with it was it has this harshness to it. There's a place where that the arrangement in the piano is sitting in a spot that sounds kind of harsh and kind of irritating to listen to over and over again. Especially with this one, there is a riff that's kind of repeated constantly, and it seems to just hit this frequency that's kind of harsh in its tone. So the first thing I did was grab an EQ, and you can see here I did some moves here, two moves here. The first one was here at 805. So around that kind of area, like 700 to 1K is usually a place where you'll find a bit of that cheap sound to a piano. If you are, we talked about that cheap Casio keyboard kind of thing, you will find a lot of that frequency with cheaper equipment. So you may find yourself taking a lot of that frequency out. So I took 6 dB out there, and I wouldn't normally do that much of a cut, but this arrangement really sits in this area, so I ended up taking out quite a lot. So 6 dB there, and here 450. So that's kind of more the muddiness that you're hearing as well. There's like a muddy tone to it, and that's not room tone. Sometimes the muddy tone is room tone. That's not room tone. That's actually just part of the sample sounds kind of muddy coming because it's coming straight out of the jack. So we're taking out some of the muddiness. We're taking out some of that sort of harsh slash cheap sort of sound, taking out both of these. Now originally, this one over here, the 450, I actually was taking out a huge amount, and I listened back to it, and I kind of halved the amount I was doing. I was taking out like 16 dB, and it was just a bit too much, so you can definitely go too far with cutting. But I'm taking out 8 dB at that sort of muddy tone to really try and brighten it up, because I want this piano to sound nice to listen to. I want it to sound twinkly and nice. That's, you know, when you think of this kind of arrangement, you think of a piano in this sort of arrangement, you want it to be twinkly and twinkly. It's a silly word, I guess, but that kind of sound to a piano, rather than it being kind of boomy or muddy or harsh. So we ended up with 2 cuts there, as you can see. And I mean, the way I found these was on the initial listen, I could just hear the tones, and then so essentially what you do is you grab your EQ, you get the Q, turn the Q up like that, and then you kind of just sweep around kind of like this. And be careful with this. Obviously, if you just sweep around all over the place, you're going to find problems everywhere you go, right? Because nothing sounds good when it's boosted that much. But essentially, I knew there was some muddy tone and it would be in this kind of area, so I sweeped around to find it. And don't take too long on this, guys. I find that you can be ultra precise with finding that particular frequency that you don't like, but at the same time, you know, it's nice to kind of hear the problem, solve the problem, move on, kind of get things done quickly. Don't get too particular about things, because you'll end up doing what I've done many times and EQing the hell out of it, and like carving and cutting way too many frequencies and using multiple EQs, and it just gets too complicated. Just make slightly bigger, more bold gestures. If there's a dull frequency that you don't like, find it, remove it, that's it, you know, keep it simple. So let's go, there we go. There we go. So we're back to how we were. And I did the same thing with the harsher, cheaper frequency. Did the same thing. Sweep around, find it, take it out, you know. And as a kind of rule of thumb, you'll find yourself taking out a lot of a frequency you don't like. Try and do half of that. You know, that's kind of like I was explaining with the other frequency here. I took out 16 dB. I ended up halving that. So take out what you feel is right, and then do about half of that, because you're honing in on a particular frequency, and so you're going to get kind of kind of deluded by listening to that frequency over and over. All right, let's move on. Next, I have a bit of reverb. Now, I normally don't do reverb like this, but it was such a small project, I wanted to just get this piano in a little space. So, did we do an AB on the EQ? I don't know if we did. Let's do that quickly. So, I'll do without EQ. put it back in. See, it's softer, right? You're getting more of the bass tones, right? Those reverberances in the bass tones, and then more of that sort of twinkly, soft sound that you really want from your piano, especially when you're playing quietly like this. Alrighty, and then this one, we just added in a reverb. So that was just a preset, Jazz Club. Just a preset. I like the sound of it. It's as simple as that, really. And as I said, I normally don't do reverb like this. I normally set it up on a send, but for this one, it was a simpler project, so I just threw it right there on the channel strip. And now this one is really important. So we have saturation. Saturation is hugely important when you're using either a virtual instrument or a keyboard, something that is sampled and not necessarily real, right? Because you're not capturing a real performance, you want the performance to sound real, like you really captured it with a real microphone or a set of microphones. So what you need to do to treat that and to get it to sound that way is to add some saturation. Now you can do this with emulation plugins that emulate certain pieces of equipment, but one way I love to use is doing tape saturation. Now there are loads of plugins out there with tape saturation. You can pay a lot of money for them. My favorite way in Logic, because it's free, is to use, they have a tape delay in Logic, and basically if you set the delay time to 0, all right, take all the dry signal out and only use the wet signal, then there you go, that you have saturation because you're only using the tape signal and there's no delay. So I have that here, and then you can adjust things. You essentially adjust the saturation. The least saturation, and the setting I use most, is like this. So that's the clip threshold all the way up. You got it on clean. There's no cut on high or low. That's going to be a minimal amount of saturation. If you want more saturation, you turn this threshold down, right? The clip threshold. So essentially at what point it's going to start kind of distorting on the tape. You can turn that all the way down. You can just play with that dial and you'll hear it depending on how loud your signal is. You can play with these things. So if you want it to be more of a muffled tape, you could take this high cut down. And then we have diffuse, so tape head mode. If you do the diffuse mode, then that's going to feel like a really old, damaged tape kind of thing. So let's hear that. I'll play without, and then I'll show you a few different settings on the tape saturation there. All right, and let's listen to diffuse with the clip threshold all the way down to hear some really drastic tape saturation. I quite like that, actually. It's quite nice. But the setting I ended up with was with the clean tape head mode there and the clip threshold all the way down. Let's listen to that. Sometimes you might feel like you are adjusting your audio a little too much, and I would say be brave with how you're adjusting your audio. Yes, you can of course do too much, but if you listen to any, just great recordings on the radio, or maybe your favorite piano recording, there's a big difference between a digital piano recording and an analog recording using microphones, and how they adjust that. So you can be quite dramatic with how you treat a digital piano signal. All right, so I did that. That was my settings on the tape saturation, and then we have the tape delay. Was this a delay? No, this is further saturation. So I kind of doubled that up, almost like stacked compression. This is like stacked saturation. I wanted it to definitely sound saturated. It wasn't a subtle effect. I'm going for something. I wanted it to maybe sound like an older recording rather than something very clean. So I actually doubled down on that. So it's exactly the same settings, just copied and pasted. So it's going through twice. So what I'll do then is we have the two saturations on. Let's take them both off, and then I'll turn them both on again. So it is very important to get some saturation on there, start making things sound real, all right? You've got to get that recording out of the digital world, because you're going to just find the signal is way too clean, all right? They make these amazing Clavinova machines to sound really clean. These are really clean samples. And believe it or not, recording with a microphone is hardly ever clean. There's always something. There's static. There's always a some element that makes it not as clean as digital. So we have to kind of dirty it up a bit with some saturation there. Alrighty, so that's the first example. I guess one more time I could A, B. Let's take them all off, and maybe I can dial them in as we play. So I think the biggest difference is in the EQ. That EQ really did some wonders for this recording, just taking out some of that kind of harshness, some of that cheaper tone, and some of the muddy tones in there as well. All right, so let's go to the other project, if my Mac doesn't explode at this point. Alrighty, so this other project, the reason I wanted to look into this one is because it's a little bit more experimental in its sound, rather than just sounding like a good recording of a piano. It's a little bit more experimental, and of course the difference is that this is a MIDI performance. This is an instrument straight off of Logic Pro 10. Alrighty, the Steinway grand piano, which I think is a great setting as long as you tweak it correctly. It's a great setting for a piano. I use it all the time. I hardly ever change it up, really. I like the Steinway. So let's listen for a second to this little piece. So as you can hear, it is more experimental. There's definitely some fun things going on. I'm actually using the pedal board plugin with a tape delay and messing around with the dials in there. It was really fun to actually play this part, not just obviously playing the piano part, but playing with the tape delay throughout the piece to kind of make some weird and wonderful sounds. So what do we do here? So as I said, this is a MIDI performance. Alrighty, you can see in here I played the performance in there, and there's all the little dots and velocities and that. Okay, so the first thing we did, let's take all these off, including that guy. First thing we did, again, exactly the same, was a EQ, and kind of similar things here. So at 406 for some reason, but basically 400, we took out 4 dB. Again, that's the muddiness. Let's take out some of that muddiness and get it a bit brighter. Again, it's the soft, twinkly piano sound that I was going for, rather than any. I'm not really looking for like a classical sound on this piece. I'm looking for something soothing, something that isn't harsh to listen to, isn't difficult to listen to. So I took out the 4 dB there at 406 hertz precisely, but it's got a wider Q. So as you can see, there's a slope. Turn that guy off. There's a slope going all the way from it starts here at like 150, and then it slopes gradually. All right, so quite a sort of conservative little curve there. And then actually, this is a different move here. This is 6,200 hertz. We're adding 3.5 dB, and again, it's another wide Q. So we're actually adding a lot of this. It's kind of the silkiness up here in this area with a wider Q. Let's just listen to that frequency in particular and see. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've gone back to this project, so I'm not sure why I added that frequency. I want to hear it myself. All right, so I've kind of soloed it out a little bit there. It's that high end. It is that silkiness, that twinkly tone that's like a little bit of ear candy. And I've just emphasized it. So I've hugely emphasized it for us to listen to here. So have a little listen. I've basically taken out all the low end there, and we have a big boost at that frequency. Right, ear sugar. Alrighty, let's go back. Undo. There we go. Right, we're back to as we were. So let me A-B that EQ there. I'll turn it off and turn it on as we go. Alrighty, so we're basically taking out some of the muddiness and bringing in some of that ear sugar. Now, something you may be noticing as we're listening there is a kind of harshness. Again, it's in a similar place on the keyboard as the other arrangement, and so around this 1K mark, it's quite loud. It's quite sort of harsh to listen to over and over again. And we'll be addressing that later on. We have some other plugins here to go through, but we will be addressing that. I just didn't address it here in the EQ. For a reason I'll tell you in a little bit. Alrighty, so next on the list we have a compressor. Now, I didn't use a compressor on the other one because we actually saturated quite a lot and it just didn't feel like it needed compression. But I'm using the vintage VCA on this one, and this is a really nice. All of these, I mean, you never need to go and buy a. I don't think you need to go and buy a emulation plugin. If you're working in Logic, you don't need to buy a plugin for compression. It's all there for you. I mean, you've got 7 different options. I actually did a video that did a rundown of what each of these emulate, and they sound great. I don't know why you would need to buy anything else. And this just comes with the software. Alrighty, so let's listen to the compression that we're doing here. So really not much compression on that da-da-ding. That final note there, we're doing like, what, 2 to 3 dB of gain reduction. The attack isn't super fast. What I find often with these emulation plugins especially, is if you take that attack all the way down to 0, you get a lot of saturation. And I wasn't looking for that much saturation from this plugin. So the attack is quick enough to grab it, but it lets the initial kind of click through. And then the release I find, it's actually on auto right now. So the release I find, if you're ever tweaking the release manually, just watch the needle and make sure that needle's coming back down where, when you want that volume to come back up. Make sure the needle's coming back down. It's the easiest way to do it. You don't have to think too hard about it. Just watch the needle, and of course listen, and you'll know if it's a faster piece, you're going to want a really fast release. If you're looking for something more subtle, you might want to do a slower release. But do just watch that needle and make sure that needle's coming back down when you need that volume to come back up again. You can also, of course, click the graph and watch it happening here, but I think this meter is actually the best way to do it. So this one actually is just on auto because that worked absolutely fine for me. I often find that the auto feature is great, so nothing wrong with just clicking auto, all right? If it works, it works. So yeah, nothing major on there. It's obviously adding a little bit of saturation from the emulation plugin. But mainly we're just kind of reining it in a little bit because we do have some louder notes in the arrangement. As I said, that da-da-ding, the ding there is louder than the other 2 notes. So we kind of want to, rein that in a little bit and make sure it's kind of consistent throughout and not too crazy dynamic. All right. Next one. We have this guy. You might recognize this. So this is the. Am I even using it? Maybe I'm not. This is the. I think one of those sound. You're hearing all those weird and wonderful sounds. I feel like I'm using this for that because this is 100% dry. So let's ignore that one. The pedal board. This is the fun one. So. This is all those weird and wonderful delays you're hearing as we go through. Let's go a bit further down, see if you can hear it anywhere. Here we go, yeah. So much fun. I love playing with this little pedal, this digital pedal. So if you grab the pedal board, grab this True Tape delay. It's a great little pedal. And essentially all I did is I have an external keyboard with some dials on it, and I assigned some of these dials to the dials on my keyboard and just played around with them as kind of played through and played around with the dials and recorded that as a performance. And if you play around with the time especially, and the feedback, time and feedback are the kind of main 2. I was also playing with the dirt feature and the mix. But the time and feedback are the ones that really kind of get that, like, you can really hear that it's a tape delay as you like slow down and speed things up. So there's really fun getting that kind of sound from that pedal board. Now the last one is the one I did promise we'd talk about, and we're using this. It's the TDR Nova, and this is a really good little plugin that I found on the internet. And essentially it's a dynamic EQ, which the difference between an EQ and a dynamic EQ is an EQ will take out a frequency throughout the whole performance, right? It just takes it out. Now, a dynamic EQ works kind of like a compressor for a specific frequency. So if that frequency, say in this example, we're looking at 943 hertz. When 943 hertz gets a little bit too loud, you can have it jump in like a compressor and turn that frequency down a bit. So let me show you what I mean. And I used it essentially, that frequency that we saw before that was a little bit kind of harsh and annoying on the ba-da-ding. It was a bit too harsh and annoying, so I wanted to kind of just rein that in a bit and make sure it's not too kind of... There's something about when you repeat a certain note, sometimes it kind of just gets on your nerves, so you need to kind of control it a little bit. So let's listen to the TDR Nova here. So you hear it's taking a lot out on especially that bada-bing. It's taking a lot out on that, almost maybe minus 6 dB. And it's important to notice that I have a pretty gentle cue here. So actually that slope is starting at like 100 hertz, all right, and it's peaking here at around 1K, and then it ends... What's that, 15K? So it's quite a gentle cue. If I did a tight cue, things could start sounding a bit weird because we're kind of taking out a specific frequency. You kind of hear the effect happening. Whereas you do something gentle like this, you're not going to notice it so much. It's not going to sound so kind of clinical. So yeah, essentially you just play around with these dials. If you want to try this one out, I believe it's a free plugin. So the Nova... TDR Nova, if you want to Google it or something. And yeah, I just found that frequency. I actually found the frequency using my regular EQ. So using this guy, I went in and I found the frequency that I didn't like, and then headed on over here to, rather than just taking the frequency out at all times, just take that frequency out when it gets too loud. So you can see here the threshold is this line here. You see that? So that's the threshold there, and when it gets louder than that threshold, it's going to start turning it down. All right, so I think it really helps rein it in and make it just sound a lot smoother as well. So let's hear with and without that plugin. So I'll start without. Nice. I think it's really helping there, keeping things smooth and gentle rather than sound. I don't want it to sound like I'm really hitting the key on the piano really hard. You know, I want that emphasis on different notes and some dynamics, but I don't want it to sound loud. I am playing softly, you know. And then the last thing here was just to send. This is to a reverb. We have Warm Wood Room. For some reason, that's the sound I was going for. And I love this. Space Designer is great. I've used it. They've come out with newer reverbs on Logic, but I use this one all the time because they have lots of different settings that you can just jump into and throw it on rather than trying to tweak things yourself. Just grab a preset, see if you like the sound, you know. Wasn't doing anything with that. So yeah, there you go. So it's only a little bit of reverb there, sending out to the reverb on that one. So I'm going to take everything off and then add it back in as we go. As everything off, bring back in the full mix, or the drums basically, and let's listen. So yes, a lot of fun. I really like this one, and it will be coming out on an album pretty soon. I'm releasing it pretty soon. So yeah, I think one of the best plugins there on that one was actually the last one, the TDR Nova, just using that dynamic EQ to kind of just rein things in and make sure that none of those notes are kind of jumping out too much. We're kind of making sure they're reined in. So yeah, I think that was kind of my favorite plugin on all of those, but obviously it's putting them all together. It's the amalgamation of all of them that gets us the sound we want. All right, so I hope those two examples kind of helped you out. One MIDI example, one keyboard example. I know most of us piano players are recording through either MIDI or keyboards because most of us don't have a giant grand piano in the living room. I don't. I wish I did, but I don't. My living room definitely isn't big enough for that. So yeah, my wife would be furious. So I hope this helped. And before you go, I actually have a recommendations guide for you if you're looking for kind of the equipment you might need to get started in recording and mixing, or you're already started but you're not sure, maybe you want to look at a new microphone or something like that. I have a little recommendations guide. There's some top tips in there and a guide to all my favorite equipment to get started on an affordable budget in the world of mixing and recording. So if you'd like to check that out, it's absolutely free from me to you. If you want to head on down to the description, there's a little link. Click the link, and there you go. You'll get the ebook. So enjoy that. Now, if you have any more questions about piano, please let me know, because I want to do more and more content on piano specifically, because there just isn't enough of it out there online. I think most of the stuff I've learned about mixing piano has been just through like trial and error. There really isn't much advice out there on the internet. For like pretty much any other instrument, there's a ton of advice. There's endless rabbit holes of YouTube videos and whatever. But for piano, it seems to be something people don't talk about much. So hopefully I can do more content on it. Please ask me some questions if you if you have any specific issues that you are coming across time and time again. If you have a specific project you're working on right now and you're looking for the answer, let me know. Try and get it into a question format and you can just head down to the comments section below and ask me a question. I'll be happy to answer it, or maybe even do a video on the subject. So until next time, my name's Tim from Audio Tutor. Make sure you like and subscribe and all those things that we do on the internet these days, and you have a wonderful day. Alrighty, bye-bye.